What are complex composables? Hello, I'm Chris Thanis. I'm a KMP developer, tech support, so they're coming out. They're going to fix that up finally. Hey, today we're going to be talking about complex composables. We have a lot of examples of these tiny little snippets of code. That's fine, everything. And yes, you do want to put things together, but when you get like a really complicated design and a complicated operation going on, or complicated composables, it starts to get a little hairy. And there were some things I wanted to show about my discoveries about some, dealing with these big complex composables. I was recently on a project that's similar to this, not the same as this, but similar to this. And this is an Android project. It's KMP, and here's the main activity. It's a standard KMP project. I'm using mostly KMP and Kotlin. Let me move my face a little bit here. And Kotlin. This is mostly a KMP, straight up compose app, and so I just want to walk through some of the features of it. The idea is that you're gonna go download this and go look at it. If you just look at the screen, you're not gonna get the information because this is a little more complicated. You're gonna have to look at the code. That's just the way it is. So here's the app right here running, and we have a thermal and RGB mode. It's like a point to zoom camera, a point tilt zoom camera with thermal and RGB camera. Here's the you can move the camera around here. This is just a static image, and this is just the skeleton. It's just the UI. It's not actually hooked up to the camera at this point, but it's expecting a 200 millisecond stream of data coming in through this UI state stream coming off a WebRTC client. So you're getting in the data stream from the chat, which is just the telemetry coming off the camera, and you also can control it back through the chat. It's just a standard way of doing robotics types of control mechanisms, and this is just doing a simulation of that. And you can see the clock is running here, and you can switch back and forth, switch back and forth. And on the thermal one, you can it's just the UI components. So nothing's actually hooked up here yet for true functionality. But this is what you have to do. Then we'll add the functionality later. But this is just the UI part of it. It has the thermal layers here. This is all pretty complicated stuff to kind of set up, and I wanted to walk through it. So here's the view model. That gets loaded right. Where is it? Right here, right here. So let's get this view model, and it's a standard Android, view model. It's good for doing testing. You really want to do view models. It's kind of a standard way for doing Android stuff. But even KMP setting things up for testing does make things a lot more handy. Even though you can get away with it just doing screenshots, but yeah, that's just level one of the testing stuff. So here's where I'm collecting the snack bar messages, which is just a launch effect that collects snack bars, and using this scaffold, it has a little snack bar host for doing that, and you have to break these things up into all these different components. So showing the previews is key. Having these previews in here, these are not optional, and you're going to see in a second why that is, because when you start getting a lot of these composable components, it gets complicated, like for remembering what does what's on where. So I have these things separated into two different layers. I got a background image, and then these directional pads is another layer. Let me let this thing load up here. So it has the directional pads here, and then we also have the status bars, which is all the different layers of the status bars here. So you can see how these are all broken up, all these into different components. And having the previews and the different sizes and all that stuff is super critical for debugging these composables, because once you get over two or three of them, figuring out which goes where and how they're layered, and you can see how I've set these things up into different layers. Here's the temperature sensor layers, and here's the zoom and temperature controls. Here's the temperature stuff. Here's the zoom controls, and there's as you switch back and forth, this particular camera you weren't able to zoom on the thermal side. So it's just how the customer had it set up. And then we have here the models that are coming in from the UI state stream. So this is the pulse that's coming through the WebRTC from the remote camera, giving you this telemetry. And this is just a sample telemetry here of what the telemetry looks like coming off this particular camera for this particular thing. And the thing is, with the composables, we do want to separate that stuff out. We want to have the view model actually collect the data, and then it's sending it over to this PTZ UI, which then does the collecting here. So if you just separate things out here, separate these things out. Easy for me to say, where you're actually collecting the data stream and parsing out the individual elements, and then passing after you have the actual state variables set up. Then you go and launch into the PTZ UI, the actual pure composable. This doesn't know anything about collect state, doesn't do anything like that. It's just a pure function, and it doesn't do anything extra special inside here. It's actually has all the elements. The state UI elements are passed in, and the next step, what I would probably do next after this is I would break these things up into instead of a bunch of parameters, I break these into different objects, different classes, and then pass those along. But again, you're half dozen one way or the other. If it makes sense to group it that way, great. But it might make more sense just to leave them all out there, so everything's apparent and all the parameters are named well and appropriately. And then so here's the layers here. So here's the box, and I've got the layers. So as you switch back and forth between thermal and RGB, it's going to switch back and forth, and it's really easy to see where all these things are laid out. And then you can get it's like, oh, okay, this is the background image layer. So if I go to background image, it's just gonna be this one thing right here. And if I go over to where's my PTC? Okay, yeah, so it's back here again. So if I, what is this thermal overlay? Like, you can't really tell from the names of this stuff. That's why these previews are super critical to have. At least every UI, every UI element has a preview associated with it. So each one of these, so I've got the layers separated out here, and the layers then use these elements, and each one of the elements is all the different elements that make up the UI. The text strings, and it's really great to have the different sizes and alignment to make sure everything's set up for these things. So you can get, if you don't have these little samples, like what is this text string, what is it actually doing? It's like, okay, it's just having it scaled specifically. I think that's the other thing too. And I'll get into the dropping down these scalings so this is for different screen sizes. So this was intended for only landscape, and it was for phones and tablets. So we had to have both two different sizes set up. So here's the different elements here. I'm going to keep going through here and show you the elements here. So there's the directional button and how it's all set up, how it's using these squish paths and the gauge bar elements here, showing the different ways of laying these things out and how they would handle more items. Because in this particular setup, you could actually have up to 6 different elements coming off the different cameras, depending on the configurations. So I've showed you how to do some of that stuff, how to separate these things out into the different elements. You cluster them down, and just like breaking up a program into functional, but you can go too far with this. You can go too far breaking that stuff up. But there's a threshold, and it takes time to kind of understand this stuff, like where you want to break these things up, what goes where, what the layers are. And sometimes it's conceptual, and sometimes it just makes more sense to have something on one layer and something on another layer. And usually the UI designers don't think about this. This is like what the engineers have to think about, like what comes priority, what will be touched first, what needs to what can clobber something else underneath, like with these temperature sensor, with these temperature thermal overlays. Like these things can, what is priority? Does the spot take priority, or does the box take priority? And does it, is it on top of this? Is it top of the controls? Is it underneath the controls? That kind of stuff. You have to think about that stuff, and a lot of designers don't think about this. And when the screens get pretty complicated, it becomes a problem you have to deal with. So here's the other thing I want to show is this composition local provider, because when you get this, so we got the lock screen orientation here, which is appropriate for this particular use case, because we only wanted it in landscape. We didn't want to do the portrait. But then you have passing down this is tablet. So we have to figure out what the size of the screen is, and that is taken in. Where is it? Is it the main activity? I think that's where I take that. Hold on, let me check real quick. Yeah, right here is where I calculate the screen size. So I'm checking to see if it's a tablet. Are we on a tablet? Or are we on a porch or on a phone? And depending on that, we're going to change the metrics, the size of the fonts, because as the screen shrinks down, it becomes more difficult to see, the text font. So you have to scale fonts differently. Some of the UI elements where it's had to be scaled differently. And let me see here. So here's the PT zoom, point to zoom camera. Here's the UI and lock screen direction, and then here it is. This is tablet. So what this composition local provider is, instead of passing is tablet down to every single component, and then the subcomponent of that, you use this composition local provider, where it wraps the entire composable with this context um, that has the different metrics for how much you want to scale the fonts, how much you want to scale the graphics, all that kind of stuff. And that is set up. Where is it set up here? It is set up. Local is tablet is set up here, right here. So this is where the theme point tilt zoom camera theme, and it's got right here. So this is where I set the scale up. I set the icon scale, the font scale, and the rounded corner size. So as it shrinks down, you want to have different rounded corner sizes, and these are available globally when you wrap this local composition local provider. So you don't have to pass this is tablet down to everything. And you have a whole bunch of them. I've also got this local on error message, which provides a stack bar message. So all the way down inside the composable, you can call the error button without having to pass the function all the way down in every single composable. You just make it available to the it makes it immediately available to here it is. So it makes it immediately available to all the subcomposables. That's the big idea. So you have to kind of go look into this. I'm not going to go show you everything, but I've tried to make it as clear as possible, and and make it, and all the wording is as clear as possible. So when you do these complex composables, I've given you some ideas about where to go and how to use these things. So yeah, this is tab. Let me see if I can go find it inside where I'm using it inside. Um, oh, so I'm using this way down deep inside these composables. So it's tablet. Here it is. So local. So here's what I'm accessing here. So I'm making it a local so it's easier to read. Local is tablet. So this is where that local is tablet is coming from right here, which is being passed into the camera UI. So so it becomes accessible way deep down inside the tree. So instead of passing it along as a parameter, every single damn thing, one of these things, that was like a big game changer for making this an easy to understand, easy to use UI, because this is tablet is used all over the place here. So that's what local composition local provider. That's the big idea there. Let me see, what else do I want to say about this? I don't know. I just explore it. It's a pretty neat little project, but shows you how to like break up these things into more subcomponents, and how to collect state using Android view models. So I think that's about it for right now. I appreciate you watching along, and we'll continue on the journey of composables.